Welcome to Sports with Shook.
How about Nick Shook?
Nick Shook?
Nick Shook sounds like he's a middle backer.
Hold up, this is a new Sports with Shook. The show might be over, but the sports never stop. This is Sports with Shook Quick Hits.
What do you want to know about Nick Shook?
Nice job, Shook.
Here's your host.
Nick Shook's a beast. He's a big dude.
You know, he's handling this business.
That's impressive. That's very impressive.
Nick Shook.
Welcome into another edition of Sports with Shook Quick Hits. I'm Nick Shook, and this time I am joined by one of my favorite people, and in the name of all things good and holy, Genesee, Mr. Gabe Kramer. Gabe, how you doing?
I am doing so well. Thank you for having me, Nick. And shout out to the World Wide Web. What's up, people?
Gabe was an original member, co-host of Sports with Shook back in, what was that, 2011? 2011.
2011.
The 8 a.m. slot when we used to go into the studio back at Kent, and we were very groggy and took a while to get up, and we did a segment where we stuffed donuts in our mouth one day, and we did a Kramer's Court. We had some crazy segments. Looking back, they were very, I don't know if I would say revolutionary, but they were different for sure.
I think revolutionary is fitting. I think that's a good word for it.
All right, so we're going to get into the Browns because that's pretty much the hot topic right now. Specifically, the Browns coming off of a disheartening loss. Probably, I would say their worst loss of the season. Maybe since their week one defeat at the hands of the Jets, I would probably say. They lost 24-6 to the Rams. They didn't really put up much of a fight in the second half. They were repeatedly gashed by rookie running back Todd Gurley, who put up a huge day as expected. And Josh McCown left with a quote-unquote shoulder injury, although I could beg to differ based on what I saw from home. And we're kind of thrust in this controversy here. And also, I think we're on the edge of apathy. And it doesn't take long for apathy to set in with the Browns in this town and this region because, well, quite frankly, they're not very good year in and year out. They haven't been good since they've been back, save for a couple of years. And at this point in the season, they're typically on the losing end of most games and in their overall record. Sitting at 2-5 right now, that is again the case. But there was some encouragement before. So now they've lost 2 games in a row. One was a very close overtime loss to the Denver Broncos and one not so close loss to the St. Louis Rams. Is it time to give up, Gabe?
It's not time to give up because you're only 7 games in, but 7 games in, it's pretty disappointing to see the way that they've been playing, but it's still early and magic can always happen. But let's be honest, this is not a very good team. Do we give up on the year and, just play for draft picks? I don't think that's ever the way to go, but I think it's obvious that this team is not very good and changes need to be made.
Okay, so changes, because you say, it's only 7 games in the season, so it's too early to give up. But when you make changes, and if they're the changes I think that you're alluding to, which we'll get to, I feel like that's kind of given up. I don't know. Is that change? Maybe we're just changing the course, adjusting. See, coaches like to call them adjustments. But like you look in Miami, for example, they fire Joe Philbin, and suddenly they've reeled off 2 straight with this guy named Dan Campbell, the former journeyman tight end, Dan Campbell, who looks like he could still go play. And they made that change. That was a drastic change, but that was a change, maybe an adjustment. So what do the Browns need?
Well, I know exactly what you're alluding to as well, but I think you're right by saying adjustments. I think we need to dig deeper into our depth chart and see what kind of players can try to develop. And I don't think putting in some younger guys to develop is giving up on the year. I think that's rather seeing if playing time experience for some of these guys would actually benefit them. And, I guess my clear example, which is probably not what you're thinking, is Cameron Irving. We drafted this guy in the first round to be a star-studded offensive lineman, and we haven't even seen him on the field. And the offensive line has been playing so poorly for the first 7 games. I mean, put this guy in and try to get him some game time experience to develop. What we heard at the beginning of the year was that he was going to play right guard. and John Greco is playing right guard, and he's got the technique down, he's got the experience, but Cameron Irving just has this outright athleticism. So who do you go with? And I think Mike Pettine is the kind of guy.
Let me stop you there for a second, because I want to know, in your opinion, and I think I know where you're going to go. You got 5 starting offensive linemen on that line right now.
Yeah.
Rate them 1 through 5.
Rate them 1 through 5. Okay. Well, I think it's pretty easy to say Joe Thomas is number 1.
Okay.
And I think it's also pretty easy to say Alex Mack is number 2. Now, this is where it gets kind of weird because the other 3 guys have been, not that the first 2 have been, outstanding, because they've both been a little disappointing, but the other 3 get a little shaky and a little messy. But I'm going to go ahead and say, and this goes against what I've been seeing for the last 3 years of football, I'm putting Mitchell Schwartz at number 3.
Oh my God, this is why I asked. Okay, please explain.
He's just the he's just the shiniest turd, I suppose. I think Joel Bitonio has been so, there's been so much yellow on the field, and it's been because of Joel Bitonio. It's been outstanding how many negative yards we get because of this guy. And I think I don't want to say sophomore slump, because I think it's a terrible excuse for a guy. But Joel Bitonio has just been, it's been like he's kind of gotten figured out a little bit. And I'm not saying we should give up on Joel Bitonio and take him out of the game, but I think he obviously needs to he needs to get over whatever this slump is and just dig deeper and get this experience so that he can move forward with it. I just think Mitchell Schwartz has just been, we haven't heard his name a whole lot. And if you're not hearing your name as an offensive lineman, that's a good thing.
Well, we have heard his name a lot in previous years for often being caught on roller skates because he just wasn't good.
Exactly. And I'm not saying that Mitchell Schwartz is like this outstanding tackle that we're going to see moving forward, but he's just been playing better out of those 3 guys, and all 3 of them have been pretty bad.
See, I obviously watch every game. I haven't had the opportunity to really go back and focus just on the line play. So I can't say that I'm speaking from an entirely informed opinion like I might have been from, say, a year prior. But I'm kind of surprised to hear that Schwartz has, and you're not the only one to say this. This is pretty much why I asked you, although I didn't know you were going to, just total disclosure here. I had no idea you were actually going to go with Schwartz at 3. Before this season, undoubtedly Mitchell Schwartz would occupy the 5th and last, the cellar of the 1 through 5 rankings there on that offensive line. No, unquestioned. No one would argue with that at all. So while he might have improved, that's almost a luxury. Like, well, our weak spot is suddenly our 3rd best lineman, or is it? I mean, you kind of already explained this too. That is it not so much that he's improved so much, but that his teammates, specifically at the guard position, are just not good.
No, that's more so it. I don't think Mitchell Schwartz is better than he was last year. I just think the other 2 guys are worse than they were last year.
So if you want to put Irving in, where are you putting him in?
I want to put him at right guard.
Now,
I want him to take over for Greco.
Do you put Greco at tackle or do you bench Greco?
I bench Greco.
Okay. All right.
I bench Greco. I mean, the Rams have a really good front 7, and what makes them so good is obviously the guys up front, the pass rush, the interior. They're very good, but at the same time, we've been saying season after season that the Browns have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. Well, it's clear who won that battle on Sunday, and it's clear who's been winning that battle week after week after week. The Browns do not have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. It's clear.
I mean, you can see that just in the fact that they can't run the football, and that's a tenet that they live and die by, supposedly. And they had to completely abandon it against Baltimore, which based on that was somewhat a reaction to Baltimore's defensive game plan, which fine, whatever, they succeeded in the past, it's fine. But this is a team that's supposed to run the ball hard and run it well, and they have multiple running backs, and this is what they built their team around, and they're not doing it. So I guess you're correct when it comes to that. I just feel like if there was a spot where Irving would slide in, and here's the other thing that we're not thinking about. He played interior line at Florida State before he slid out to tackle and played tackle very well. The guy can play anywhere. He's athletic enough to play anywhere.
Well, he was recruited as a defensive lineman.
Right.
And then, when the coaches asked him to play offensive line, and in his mind, he was thinking, this is their way of phasing me out as far as the game plan. And then he starts at tackle and does pretty well, and then plays center and does even better. You know what I mean? So he is really a versatile player. And what that tells me, he's just a football player. So we need these types of guys on the field. And I understand he doesn't have the experience, and maybe he's not better than John Greco right now. But moving forward, he needs this game time experience in order to get better than John Greco moving forward, and not just better right now, but better for years and years to come.
Well, one thing that's encouraging too is he did get a little bit of playing time when the game was out of reach and Manziel was in. And I'm not going to say that they're going to pair them together because they're not going to. But maybe he gets a little bit of good film, and they become the coaching staff becomes a little more comfortable with considering inserting him if Greco or Bitonio, which I don't see them replacing Bitonio because he's a second year player who was so incredible last year. He was just marvelous. I mean, the guy was so good according to coaches, and offensive line is a hard position to quantify because there really aren't any statistics. So you really have to watch the film to understand how good and how effective a guy is. And you also have to understand the nuances of footwork and positioning and hand placement and those types of things, and just technique overall to really see if a guy's doing his job well. Like point in case, I'm gonna rely on this forever. End of last season college football, and not to get on a tangent, this will be brief. TJ Clemmings played tackle for Pitt, and he was seen as a big guy, prototypical, could move his feet, blah, 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 so on and so forth. He'd only been playing offensive line for 2 years, and if you knew anything about offensive line play and had experience especially playing offensive line, you didn't have to watch much of his film to realize that he's not nearly as good as the people were salivating over him for. Yeah, his numbers looked good. His measurables looked good. But he lacked a lot of polishing when it comes to his technique, his ability. He was he was an upright blocker. He was a reacher. And, he just lacked things that you would expect to see in a well-polished lineman. So it took until, and I remember this vividly because every time I heard him talked about in the months leading up to the draft, including the combine and everything else, TJ Clemmings, he's going to be the best lineman drafted in this class. And I'm sitting there thinking, there's no way. There is no way. I've seen this guy play. I've just seen cut-ups. This guy is not good enough to be a first or second round pick. So you can fast forward to the Senior Bowl, and they're doing one-on-ones, which is my ultimate favorite thing to watch in sports. As crazy as it sounds, is watching a one-on-one drill, offense, defensive lineman in a practice. I will take that over anything.
Trench wars.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm watching the offensive line, defensive line one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl practice on NFL Network. And Clemmings gets absolutely manhandled. In almost every instance, he got torched. And I'm like, I knew it. I knew that guy couldn't play. What happens? He goes in the 4th round, and he's slowly working his way in. I think he went to Minnesota. So that's kind of my tangent, per se, to explain that, this is you really have to look deeply to understand if a guy is actually doing very well. And Bitonio, like I said, he had a good year, but I think he was a little overhyped, and I think that makes his lack of execution this year a little more startling and almost alarming. Whereas some people might want to see Irving come in for him, but I think you keep him there, and maybe you replace Greco, and maybe Schwartz continues to play well, and then you have solved your issues. But it's something that at 2-5 they should consider. So I agree with you on that.
Well, here's my take on Bitonio. I think, we talked him up so much, whether it was us, the fans, whether it was the coaches or other players or Joe Thomas, anyone else on the line. And, maybe Bitonio wasn't as outstanding as we all thought he was, but now he's got a target on his back. So now we notice when he makes these big mistakes. Now other teams know they have to consider him in the game plan. So he's a guy that you have to move forward with and expect that he's going to reach that sort of potential. And he's not going to reach that sort of potential on the bench if we replace him with Cameron Irving. John Greco, he's out of potential. I'm sorry. He's not the young stud that we need. Sure, maybe he's more fundamentally sound, and maybe he's understands the playbook better than Cameron Irving. But like Joel Bitonio, Cameron Irving needs to get in there, get his feet wet, and get smacked around a little bit. And, then he'll learn how to smack back the other guy. Although it's
I think that unlike, sorry to cut you off, but I think unlike maybe the quarterback position where logic prevails in most cases among the common fan and the common football watcher, that you should spend years on the bench behind as an understudy before you can step on the field and actually perform well, which has some truth to it. I think that a position like offensive line and really a lot of other positions, baptism by fire is the better way to go because you're only going to improve from there. Yeah, you might learn a little bit about yourself in the process and whether you can handle the adversity of it or not. But the only way you're going to get better is game situation. I'm sorry, you really can't simulate game situation except in the game.
No, you're absolutely right. Which is why, I mean, and I'm not saying we're giving up on the year, but we're realizing that this is not exactly a team that's going to make a splash this year. They're already 2-5. At the best, they're gonna, be flirting with 500. I mean, that's kind of what we're hoping for at this point of the year. But we still want to go for it. But still, moving forward, you have to realize, man, this Cameron Irving, we drafted him in the first round. We drafted him in the first round for a reason because he's good and because we need him on the offensive line. You draft an offensive lineman in the first round because your offensive line is not as good as you want to be. Put that guy in. Make that offensive line better.
Yeah, that and like you said, at 2-5, and I'm actually going to use this as a segue here too. You kind of want to see what you have in your young guys because the season isn't necessarily over, but they've got a whale of a schedule. I mean, the next 5 games are the Cardinals, first place in the NFC West, Cardinals. The Bengals, first place in the AFC North. The Steelers, who lost on Sunday, but they're getting Ben Roethlisberger back, so they're going to be another animal. The Ravens, who are 1-6, but are way better than the record actually shows. They're not the Ravens of the past, but they are way better than 1-6. They're I would even go as far to say they could be a 4-3 team very, very easily.
I mean, we took them to overtime.
Right, exactly. And then they've got
so it wasn't an easy win.
Right, and the only reason the Browns even got that win is essentially because Baltimore lacks the depth. They've had a lot of injuries.
They were banged up in that game.
Right. Not only were they banged up in that game, they lost Forsett, which they lost their main runner. And they've already lost guys prior to that game. And, their depth isn't there to where they can bounce back from that. And that's why they're struggling the way they are and losing close games because they're lacking those guys who can give them that extra nudge over the edge and get them those close victories. So, all right. So after Baltimore, you've got Cincinnati again on December 6th. Then you play the 49ers. So there's finally a break. Then you play the Seahawks, the Chiefs, whose defense has been a lot better as of late. And then you end the season with the Steelers. There is not an easy game there, maybe for the 49ers. And that's in December. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 6 games away. If you lose these next 5 games, you're 2-10. No one is going to care at that point. So while you're only 2-5, it's an uphill climb, to say the least. And you have a 36-year-old guy at quarterback who's got a shoulder injury, who's already been concussed once this year. And I swear I don't care what the Browns say, and I never want to be one to speculate, but I saw the look in Josh McCown's eyes, and I saw what kind of blows to the head he took on Sunday. And having had many concussions, and also seeing him roll around on the field and hold his head, the guy had at least had the cobwebs knocked out, all right? And he very well could have been concussed. And I didn't like the fact that nobody checked him until after that series. That really bothered me. And that also proves to me, what are you hanging on to this guy for? What are you hanging on to Josh McCown for? Do you know?
All right, you're gonna Nick. We've been talking about Cleveland Browns quarterbacks pretty
I know, and I don't want this to be a Johnny discussion. I'm sorry.
No, it has to be a Johnny discussion because that's where the Browns are. They're 2-5, and what do we do? What are we going next year? There's a graveyard in Cleveland in someone's front yard of quarterbacks past. Look up that story. It's all over Twitter. You'll see it somewhere. But here's the deal.
I saw it. Trust me, I saw it.
Yes, and it's hilarious.
Virgin wins my favorite headstone. He's 0-1 as a starter.
He's 0-1 as a starter. Tough break, man.
Also selected before Tom Brady. Don't forget, selected before Tom Brady.
Is it the Tom Brady 8 or is that what it is? Tom Brady 6?
Yeah. I think it was the 6. Was it the Brady 6? Brady, yeah. Right? Isn't that what that documentary was?
Whatever it was the
Brady
Tom
6.
Brady Too Many.
I'll Google that while you respond.
The Tom Brady Too Many. All right, so you know how I've felt about the current Browns quarterback situation. I've wanted to see what Johnny can do. I I think he's an accurate passer. He's undersized, but I think he's a guy who can make some plays. However, he's a train wreck off the field, getting better a little bit, but can't seem to shake certain ghosts. Basically, here's my take on Josh McCown. Browns fans, you have to be pleased with what this guy has done in the last 7 games. The truth of the matter is the Browns are playing so poorly, and you look across the field, you look at the DBs, the linebackers, the line on both sides, the skill players, you can't really have too many complaints about Josh McCown. It's easy to complain about the running game and the blocking scheme and the missed tackles, but look what Josh McCown has done. Since playing against Oakland, 341, 356, 457, 213, and 270 in passing yards. And he's come out there and he's fought hard, and you haven't seen that same type of fight out of the rest of the team. I mean, he's getting banged up. You made this comment, Nick, in game 1 against the New York Jets when he dove into the end zone. You say, "Hey, man, at least he's out there being tough,
right,
and trying to make a play." I mean, at least he's out there, showing some guts, trying to make a play. Now, knocked him out of the game, and I think that messed up the team for the rest of the game, and kind of shook up the game plan. And then it knocked him out for the next game. But, that dude's put up some good fights. So it just seems like there's so many things going on with the Browns that are going so poorly. Unfortunately, Josh McCown's not really one of them. And I understand he's not this star-studded quarterback who's going to take us to the promised land, is going to take us to the Super Bowl, and is going to give us, a good 5 years of quarterback play. But he's not the problem of this team right now. So you're not going to believe me in saying this, but I don't think it's time for Johnny Manziel yet. I mean, unless Josh McCown is really banged up and he has some serious concussion problems right now, I think we should still stick with Josh McCown. I mean, the thing about Johnny, even though he's not playing, he's still getting some good experience on the bench. He's still going to get some good experience, holding that clipboard and learning from Josh McCown and, watching this offense play out. Things that he probably didn't do last year. He probably didn't pay too much attention. And it was clear when he came out of the Bengals and was handing the ball off to the wrong side of the play, giving the ball off to the wrong guys and, not being able to read the defenses. So now he can really pay attention and he can be groomed into this quarterback. However, we do need to find out whether this guy can play or not. So we do want to see him at some point, but I do think we have to. I don't think it's time to just give up the ship. I mean, here's the thing. Mike Pettine right now is not going to put in Johnny Manziel until he absolutely has to. And the reason why is because he knows that right now Josh McCown is going to give him the best chance at winning. And right now, Josh McCown has been giving him a good chance at winning these games.
More importantly, though, Josh McCown's going to give him the best chance of keeping his job.
Exactly.
Which is a chief concern. But my problem with it is, and I understand that. I get that dynamic. I get that motivation. That all makes sense to me. And I've seen it before. I understand. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the thing is with me is Johnny Manziel's not going away. This clamoring for Manziel. The only way you make it go away is if you win football games like you did against Baltimore, where McCown puts up crazy stats, or you just win football games in general. That's the only way it goes away. But they're not doing that. True. And at this point in the season, I don't see they would have to have one hell of a turnaround. They would almost have to win out to really have a viable shot at the postseason. And maybe you just want to be in contention like you were last year. But at this point, I don't even see them going 7-9. That would be a feat in itself. They would have to win 5 of their last 9 to go 7-9. I don't see that happening. Not with that schedule that we just listed. I could see them winning maybe 2 of those games. 4-12 is what we're looking at right now. We're looking at 4-12. And I'm not the type to look at the schedule and be like, oh, they're going to win that one, they're going to lose that one. I hate doing that. But with that in mind, and with McCown's age in mind, he might give you the best chance to win, but you're not going to win. And I feel like
it's pretty bad.
The Johnny Manziel experiment can only last for so long before it becomes radioactive, before it becomes detrimental to the team, and before it is a damaging factor.
So you want to put him in?
Put him in, figure out if the guy can play. And if he can't, then you got to move to get another one.
Well,
and if he can, then you got your quarterback. I feel like we could very easily, right now the Browns are middling on a path in the woods. We could very easily insert Manziel and move you up to the Robert Frost scenario of a fork emerged in the woods and diverged one of two ways. We could take the path less traveled, and maybe Johnny succeeds. That's what the path less traveled is. Or we could take the path that everybody else walks down, which is Manziel doesn't do well and the Browns need another quarterback. But we can get there to where it's A or B. I am a person who hates being in limbo more than anything. Top 5 pet peeves are low talkers and being in limbo, among other things. The Browns are in limbo at that position, and it's really making me mad because I feel like Mike Pettine is holding on to Josh McCown like a life raft after the Titanic just sank. He's getting on that door, and there's room for 2 people on that door, damn it. And he is hanging on to that door and saying, I'll never let go, Jack. I'll never let go, Josh. I'm hanging on to you. Because that's the only way they're surviving. And that's the only way he's keeping his job. And it's making me mad because it's stunting the growth of the team overall.
All right, so devil's advocate here. All right, let's say we put Johnny Manziel in. Are we setting him up for disaster? Are we putting him in front of an offensive line that's not going to give him protection,
and a
running game that's not going to help him advance the ball and find short yardage situations?
You have a point with the running game. You do have a point. But that offensive line has given McCown enough time to throw. And the thing is they faced a decent pass rush against Tennessee in week 2. Manziel looked fine. I mean, he made quick reads, quick pass. You can game plan around that a little bit. You can shorten the field a little bit, make it a little bit easier for Manziel. Plus, don't forget, he's a lot more mobile than Josh McCown. The guy can make plays with his feet.
True. But the Tennessee Titans don't have the same type of pass rush.
But here's the thing: is that athleticism considered? You're not walking Manziel into a massacre. You're not walking him into 1,000 troops against 100,000 troops. You're not. He's not going to go in there and get killed.
All right. So what if Johnny comes in and this team goes 4-12? Have we found our guy, or are we looking for a new guy? I mean, let's say he's not turning the ball over so often. He's scoring some points.
You lose close games.
But the team is still really bad. I mean, there's so many issues on this team. What kind of are we going to give a fair assessment to Johnny Manziel when it's all said and done, but the team loses the rest of their games, which could very well happen with Josh McCown? I mean, I guess part of the situation is we don't know what the plan is for Mike Pettine and Ray Farmer. Are they committed to grooming Johnny Manziel and making him the quarterback next year? Exactly. So are they going to just get rid of Johnny Manziel if they don't play him for the rest of the year? Or are they going to keep him on the roster?
Well, that's the thing. They're not committed to grooming him, so why not play him and figure it out and let yourself decide one way or the other and be like, listen, we figured out the guy can't play. We're getting rid of him. Or, oh, wow, we might actually have something here. Maybe we should pay attention to him. It forces a hand. It forces some action. That's all I want to see. I want to see some action. Josh McCown is a bridge quarterback in the purest sense, but he's also a stopgap in a situation where they don't need a stopgap because they ain't going anywhere. So why not figure out something for the future than have this middling average guy who has a very obvious ceiling, who can play well, he can play decently, and maybe get you a few wins. I mean, that at that point, you're conceding that you are okay with being a mediocre football team. Instead of, you can be mediocre and at least know that, hey, this is a guy that we want for the future, or, hey, this guy is not our future. You can be mediocre and figure that out one way or the other. That's either a silver lining or it's a clear point that you need to go in a different direction. But with Josh McCown, you're not getting either. You're just middling. You're just in limbo. You're twisting in the wind. And that's not doing anything for them in the future because they're not going to be good this year. That's obvious. But why not figure it out for the future?
All right. I mean, I'm on board with putting Manziel in. I've been wanting to see Manziel for a really long time. And, we've had conversations about whether or not Johnny can play. You're not so convinced. I'm more convinced.
Well, yeah. If anybody's listened to the show in the last few years, they'll know that I am Johnny Manziel's. I'm the anti-Manziel. And it's even worse because when I go out in public, people look at me and call me Johnny Manziel because I look somewhat like him. And that only fueled the fire of disdain for him. But
except you tower over Johnny Manziel.
Oh yeah, I got like 6 to 7 inches on the guy. But despite my dislike for him,
you want to find out if he can play.
I want to know.
All right, so I'm on board because we are in a situation, but it's tough as a coach to look at to say, Josh, You've been doing all right, and you're kind of the least of our issues as far as the entire roster goes or how well everyone's been playing. But you're the one who's going to hit the bench, and that's kind of tough as a coach, especially for a coach who's trying to save his job.
Here's the thing, though. It doesn't have to be this week. It could be down the road. It doesn't have to be right now, in my opinion.
Okay, then when do we make the change?
After the bye week.
So you give Josh McCown till the bye. I mean, let me pull up the schedule real quick. So you're saying give Josh McCown Arizona, Cincinnati on the road, Pittsburgh on the road, and then hello Johnny.
Yeah.
All right. But why wait?
Play Johnny Manziel on Monday Night Football, baby. Why not?
Oh man!
It's made for TV.
Johnny was made. That's interesting.
The Browns trot out of the tunnel, and they're all orange uniforms that Dante Whitner handpicked, and leading them out is the little pumpkin that could, Johnny Manziel.
Here's another situation for the sake of devil's advocate. Josh McCown plays the remaining games this year. You don't know what you have in your future quarterback still. You don't know if Johnny Manziel can play. You don't know if he's the guy. But, you're in a position where you can draft a quarterback in the first round, and maybe he's the guy. Do you take that quarterback, or do you stick with Johnny Manziel?
That's my point. You've shot yourself in the foot at that point. Because you don't know what you have. And maybe there's someone – I don't know if there's anybody right now that's really, coming out of college that's making me think, yeah – that's who I want at quarterback.
True. But here's this kind of an interesting point.
But yeah, hypothetically. Go ahead.
Hypothetically, Johnny Manziel doesn't see the field, which you don't want. I don't want. We have no idea if this guy can play. But the coaches either are committed to him or they're not committed to him, and they maybe decide to take a quarterback in the first round. Now they have a first-round quarterback from 2014 and a first-round quarterback from 2016. Obviously, people are going to favor the guy from 2016, but can you let them compete in camp? I mean, can you make it a quarterback competition?
Neither of them have any extensive experience. That's as bad as competing Brian Hoyer versus Ryan Mallett. I mean, the only difference is there might be a little bit higher level of talent there, but in the end, neither of these guys have played substantial amounts. You don't have an incumbent versus a younger guy. You don't have somebody who might electrify an offense. That's as bad as having two lame duck quarterbacks at once.
I don't know, man. I would be a little bit not interested.
That is a recipe for disaster.
Well, let's say, look at the Tennessee Titans. They brought in a quarterback and they started him week 1. There wasn't any question about it. They didn't have an experienced guy to compete with. They had Zach Mettenberger, and yeah, he had some playing time, but he wasn't exactly.
Hey, don't forget about Clipboard Jesus. Don't forget about Clipboard Jesus.
But he's also not a guy who you can consider an incumbent.
But he's one of Nashville's most attractive people.
He
was in their magazine. He has flowing locks and wears a fedora and plays guitar.
Well, he should take off the fedora, burn the guitar, and stick to the clipboard. That's my opinion on Charlie.
But yeah, in all reality, I understand what you're saying. That's a different scenario though, because they knew they didn't have anybody though. They knew Zach Mettenberger wasn't the future. They knew Charlie.
I think that's kind of the situation. You don't know what you're getting from Johnny Manziel. You keep on the roster just because you have 3 quarterbacks.
So
on your roster.
Play him and figure it out.
Well, no, I guess I'm just saying in the future, if you are to draft a quarterback in the first round and you still don't know what you have from Johnny, you're kind of gonna just go with the first round guy, kind of like the Titans did. Maybe you'll go in that situation, and then who knows? Maybe if Johnny really is that good. If Johnny really is good enough to be the starter, he'll win the starting job. I mean, is that not true? I mean, is that not the situation? All I'm saying is maybe there's a piece of Johnny Manziel who needs to see the bench right now. Maybe there's a part of, the Browns who really need to not rush this guy into getting into the game so soon because, there are a lot of quarterbacks who come in right away and are very successful. I mean, Marcus Mariota's doing all right so far. He had a great week 1, and we'll see what's going on after that. But Matt Ryan, Joe Flacco, guys like Russell Wilson and Andrew Luck, guys can come in and start week 1, but some guys need time to develop, and that includes guys like Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees, guys who really took some time to develop, and maybe Johnny's that guy, but the Browns are on a time crunch as always, and you have to figure out what you have in Johnny Manziel. All I'm saying is, I think you have to look at Johnny Manziel's rookie year as just a wash. I mean, he did nothing to gain experience except for, getting whooped around a little bit in a couple games, but he didn't really do anything to better himself and groom himself into a professional quarterback. This year, he's 7 games in, and he had a pretty good game against Tennessee, but he had a pretty bad game against New York. And
yeah, I don't really like to count New York entirely against him because, yeah, he might have been prepared for the game, but on the second series, like, really? Talk about getting thrown in the fire.
Exactly. So I mean, there's a part of me that wants to see him get groomed a little bit, and maybe he needs that nurturing in order to succeed and become a successful quarterback.
Here's the thing, and I understand. I get,
and maybe that's why we wait till the bye week. Maybe 3 weeks is what it takes. Who knows?
Right, and I get what you're saying. Trust me, I get it. But I think that your scenario with the whole drafting a guy and having them two battle it out, I don't think that's realistic in comparison to the other guys that you listed. Like, for example, Matt Ryan was drafted to be the guy in Atlanta because Atlanta knew that they only had Chris Redman. Chandler was the quarterback of the Falcons in when they went to the Super Bowl. But Chris Redman was never going to be a franchise quarterback. Okay. He's a lifetime backup. They knew that, and they knew they needed to get the guy and play him immediately. Tennessee knew that they wanted to play Marcus Mariota immediately. So that's happened for same thing with Joe Flacco. I think they had, oh God, who was the starting quarterback was it Kyle Bowler? Was he still in Baltimore before they drafted Joe Flacco, or was there a couple years in between? I think they had Tony something. God, what's his name?
At what point did they have Steve McNair?
That was it. They had McNair, and then they drafted Flacco. McNair was their stopgap, but they knew, like, they figured it out. They're like, we'll have Aaron McNair, and eventually we're going to draft the future. The Browns could have the future on their roster, but they don't know because they won't play the kid. And I hate that we've spent like 15 minutes talking about this, but I also hate that every game he sits on the bench, we're not figuring out if he's good or not, because you're stunting the growth of the team. The guys around him are not going to be young forever. And yes, there are needs elsewhere, which is another one of my points. Why draft another quarterback if you don't know if you have a quarterback on your team? At least you could figure out you don't have a quarterback. Then you justify drafting a quarterback. In the meantime, you could find out that you do have a quarterback already, and then you can address some of the other needs, like a wide receiver, which the Browns have needed for a decade because Josh Gordon can't stay clean, and Dwayne Bowe just wants to collect paychecks in a T-shirt on the sideline, or maybe you could draft some linebackers because Carlos Dansby's getting old and the Browns can't stop the run. Or maybe you can draft another interior defensive lineman to add to the giant plethora of linemen, so many that they had to cut some linemen that were actually decent in this front seven. Or maybe you can add another cornerback because Justin Gilbert's a complete failure and doesn't even see any snaps. Or a pass rusher because Barkevious Mingo rarely sees snaps and has made one momentous play in his time in Cleveland. You can address these other situations if you know that Manziel's your guy. Or you can address the quarterback situation first if you don't know that's your guy. It can set you down one of two processes. But if you don't know, then you can't do jack. So,
well, I think it's pretty simple, and we've all been a lot of fans, you and I included, have been kind of saying the same thing ever since week one. We want to see Johnny's guy. We want to see if he can play. If he can't play, then we'll know how to draft when the season comes around. I have a question for you, though. Have you been calling for Johnny since week one?
No, I actually had no problem with McCown playing. I was fine with that. But if the Browns were 5-2, I wouldn't be talking about this right now. I wouldn't, because I'd be like, all right, well, they're in contention and they're not going to have a high pick.
How did you feel about it at 2-3?
2-3 is a lot different than 2-5.
It is. It's very different. But
especially since they had lost, they had almost come back to beat Oakland. They just ran out of time, and they had lost a heartbreaker to San Diego, a game that they could have and should have won if they had any defense. And at that, and then they had beaten Baltimore, and I felt pretty good coming off of that. I was like, maybe they'll catch the Broncos. I know the Broncos are undefeated, but Peyton Manning's not what he used to be. And for much of that game, that proved to be true. But here's the thing that Zach Jackson and Andre Knott brought up on the A to Z podcast, which I totally suggest you go listen to if you have a chance. They pretty much laid it out plain and simple. The Browns don't have the reason the Browns are 4-12 team and why this season is lost is because they don't have enough good players to get them over the hump, just like the Ravens because of their injuries, to get them over the hump in those close games. They don't have the guys to, Dansby he houses a pick six and, suddenly everything's going in the right direction. They don't have the guys to stand up strong on that ensuing possession when Emmanuel Sanders goes 80 yards or whatever it was on a fly route. They don't have the guys to stop that. They don't have enough good players to stand up after a great play and then get the ball back again and make another great play. So this season is doomed. But at the same time, like I said, going back before, you can still learn something if you put the kid in. And
I'm on board.
There's no future with Josh McCown. There's no future. He serves his purpose. He's a good tutor. He's a good mentor. And if the Browns were 5-2, we wouldn't be talking about this because I'd be excited the Browns are 5-2 and that Josh McCown would be living up to McCown in Chicago and not 2014 McCown in Tampa Bay. But he's not. He's playing well. The rest of the team isn't playing as well. But you're not accomplishing anything at this point, losing multiple games. And I'm telling you, I'm going to the game this Sunday, Gabe, and it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be pretty.
True.
But it might be a little bit prettier and it might be a better game if Manziel plays.
Wow.
It might be a little more exciting.
Nick Shook is excited at the idea of watching Johnny Manziel play for the Browns. I would have never guessed this in the last 2 years.
I kind of want to think, I'm thinking of a comparison to Josh McCown because here's the thing: is the guy hasn't played poorly. He's been all right.
I mean, that's kind of the weird thing about it is because Josh McCown is going to get benched or should get benched because of the guys around him. He's going to ride the pine because the defense can't stop the run. He's going to sit down and hold a clipboard because his receivers are fumbling the balls. I mean, that's
which was really bad on Sunday. Wow,
it was really bad. What it's going to come down to because, we're losing games. It's not Josh McCown's fault, but we're losing games to the point where we got to find out if the guy behind Josh McCown can play. So that's just a weird situation that, unfortunately, Josh McCown did not dig his own grave. But he's laying in it. That's for sure.
But here's the thing, too, is he went on record as saying, I came in here, hoping to compete, but if I didn't get the job, I'd be okay with being the best mentor to Johnny Manziel that I could be.
That's true.
Which is great on his part. And, I respect him a lot for that. But I feel like the best course of action right now is the one that we've already laid out. Let McCown, if he's healthy. Here's the other thing, Gabe. The guy, he ain't healthy. He's not even as healthy as they say he is. He had a hard time talking after the game on Sunday. He got the crap beat out of him. I don't know if he lasts another game. We might see Johnny Manziel by default. So, all right, you let him play this Sunday. I mean, I'm honestly, I hate to say this too, Gabe. I'm not necessarily advocating to bench him. I'm not really on my soapbox shouting that he should be benched. I'm more saying I would like to see Johnny Manziel play.
How do you do that without benching
if that's
Josh
possible? I know. I don't know.
Do you want him to share time? I mean,
no,
do you want to see?
That's the worst thing you could possibly do.
I
think that you let McCown play and you let him play, but I just think inevitably he's going to get knocked out of it. Especially the Cardinals' defense is pretty good, and I think at one point, here's the thing. Speaking hypothetically again, if McCown were to get hurt in this game, like because he's been beaten really badly for a lot of the season.
Well, he got a concussion on the first drive of the season, so yeah,
exactly.
I'd say he's been paid up pretty bad.
Exactly. If you let him play and he gets hurt, and Manziel plays, I don't think you're in a rush to play McCown again, and I think you might not put McCown back in again for the rest of the season. I mean, why? What's the benefit? I guess that's my point in this whole thing. What's the benefit once McCown exits the game, be it by coach's decision or by injury, the latter being more likely than the former? What's the reason of putting him back in? You have nothing to gain from that.
The only reason is going to be a reason that we don't want. It's going to be because Mike Pettine's trying to save his job. I mean, and his job at this point is to get as many wins as possible, no matter what. He can't sacrifice wins for quarterback experience in the young guy. He can't do that because he's got to get that paycheck. We don't have that luxury. So
Right.
that's why if Josh McCown has to sit out for the next 3 weeks because he's got a concussion, we're going to see Johnny for the next few weeks, and then Josh McCown's coming right back. That's why we would see that. Now, unfortunately, maybe we're just in the situation where the only way we're going to see Johnny Manziel is if Jimmy Haslam says, you know what, Mike, you know what, Ray, you guys are good. You guys are good no matter what. You guys could, we could go 2-14 and you guys are good. And then we'll see Johnny, maybe, hopefully. But still, is that a situation we want to be in? Do we want to guarantee Mike Pettine and Ray Farmer that they're not going to get the pink slips come, week 18? I mean, is that really a promise we want to give those guys?
Well, we all know the dreaded vote of confidence, right? And that's like the Turk. That's that's the Grim Reaper walking down the hallway. Mike Pettine's our coach from Jimmy Haslam, quote unquote, from Jimmy Haslam's. Oh, Mike Pettine's our guy. Ray Farmer's our guy. That means you're done. You're toast. Dead man walking.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you brought that up because that's what I was leading to, and you kind of beat me there. Good job. You beat me in a race.
I'm not so great at the 40, but when it comes to predicting Jimmy Haslam quotes, maybe I'm the guy.
I want to know your opinion on not so much Ray Farmer, but on Mike Pettine. Is he, because we've seen some improvement, but there are a lot of glaring issues, and some of them do fall on the coach, namely the penalties. Is Mike Pettine the guy?
Before Mike Holmgren left Cleveland, he said, when it comes to building a team, it's all about continuity. But he ended it with, but you have to have continuity with the right guys. And it sucks because we want Mike Pettine to be the guy. We want Mike Pettine to be, the guy we can have continuity with and, gain this experience and build this team with. But man, I'm sorry. I don't think he's the one. I don't think Mike Pettine's the guy. I think, there's no reason for our defense to be playing this poorly. And here's what really gets me. All year on paper, all summer on paper, we thought, man, we're going to be able to play some pretty good defense. We were pretty terrible against the run last year, but we brought in Randy Starks. We drafted Danny Shelton with our first round pick, and we drafted a whole bunch of guys to help stop the run, and we brought in a whole bunch of guys to help stop the run. And our pass rush and our secondary is going to be so good that it's going to help our pass rush come along. And our pass rush is going to be there because Paul Kruger had 11 sacks last year, and now we got Nate Orchard. And, that means that's going to clear up some space for Paul Kruger to get down there even more times. And then we thought, but we're going to be able to pound the rock. You know why? Because we had this great offensive line with Thomas, Bitonio, Mack, Greco, and Schwartz. And it got even better because we brought in Cameron Irving. So we're going to play some old school football, stop the run, have this great defense, and then offense. We're going to run the ball, put it into short yardage situations, and maybe, just maybe, Josh McCown's got enough gas in the tank to convert on a 3rd and short situation, and we'll win some games along the way. That's what we've been saying all year long. But
you make me want to cry, man.
It's crazy.
It sounded so ideal, and none of it has happened.
It's crazy that the opposites happen. The defense has been so bad. The offense has been outshining the defense, but the offensive line has been so bad. I mean, it's crazy that
the passing game with the no-name receivers that the Browns have, with Dwayne Bowe not even dressing for games, has been the best, has been the bright spot of this team, which also kind of speaks to your point that, it's really too bad that Josh McCown might lose his job on this, but that's been the best part. And Andy Lee, which we knew Andy Lee would be the all-star on this team, but
yeah,
that's
my issue. The team is not what we expected them to be. We expected to have this great defense. We expected to have this great offensive line, this great run game, but it's not what they should be. And on top of that, Joe Hayden is not playing like a shutdown corner. Joe Thomas is making silly mistakes. There's a lot
Joe
of
Hayden's
flat.
not playing at all.
Exactly. But when he was in, it was just like, man, he's getting beat by some rookie. I mean, it was just crazy for me to think that maybe Mike Pettine, maybe Jim O'Neill, maybe they're losing their guys. Maybe they're neglecting to continue to groom the experienced guys. I mean, let's be honest. Even if you're an experienced vet in the NFL, I don't know what it's like to be an experienced vet in the NFL, but they still need coached. They still need to be told what to do. They still need to, work on their everyday technique. And I don't know what's going on in practice, but it sure seems like where we thought we were going, our strengths all of a sudden turn into weaknesses. And I have to put that on the coaching because it just seems like, on paper, we've got these guys who can really play, but they're not playing well because the coaches aren't getting the best and the most out of their players. That's my thinking.
Right. And here's two things that are alarming, two separate points that I'm going to try and hit very quickly on both. Number one, coaches who shift from trying to develop their team to trying to save their job are usually detrimental to the team.
Yeah.
That could happen very soon with this team. And that's not good. Number two is, I don't know if you read that story that Kevin Jones filed to SI upon quitting the Browns, which is a whole another can of worms. But it referenced the scheme being too complicated, too reactionary based and just different from every other scheme. And that's why they weren't stopping the run. It wasn't the players, it's the scheme. So maybe that's actually true.
That's the thing. I mean, Kevin Jones had some insight that
he was with the team. He was the team writer for 2 years. I covered something for NFL.com back in May. I think it was April. It was the uniform release, and I saw him there. I mean, I saw him talk to guys, and it wasn't like if you and I went out to get some sound and talk to some players. There wasn't an air of professionalism, common courtesy, personal space bubble, if you will. It was more like, oh, what's up, homie? Like, what's up, bro? Oh, hey, I'll catch you later. Like that kind of thing. So that means that he was really tight with the players. So there's got to be some substance to this report.
Exactly. And it's extremely alarming. I mean, he didn't write about it when he was working for the Browns, but the second he leaves, it's out there. And that's why you wonder, is it all true? Is the coaching really that bad? Is the situation that players can't play in this defense? So he's turning quality players into not so great players. I mean, we've been complaining about Dante Whitner since he's gotten here. We've been saying maybe Carlos Dansby hasn't been playing as good as we thought he would. And, we've all been complaining about Danny Shelton, and even Paul Kruger has been complaining. So is it really
Paul
a matter
Kruger
of
never plays? The guy's in on pass rush situations barely. He's a package. He's been reduced. He's a marquee free agent who now just plays package rushing. He's a package guy. Like, come on. No,
but you're right. I mean, is it the system? I mean, are they in a system where the players just can't succeed? And I'm afraid that's where we are.
See, here's something that I don't know if anybody's ever really thought of too. When Kevin Jones tweeted his thank you to the Browns, it was on a little notepad screenshot because that's the best way to get a long message out via Twitter. Yeah. And it's actually a heck of an idea if you think about it. But he mentioned it has been a challenge. It's been a welcome challenge for me to try and put a positive spin on everything Browns for the last 2 years. It's almost like the guy knew that these players were so fed up with this scheme and it was so bad that he got these quotes, wrote this story, filed the SI, and quit. Like, this is my stand for you guys. I don't know if it was that noble, but it's got to take a lot for a guy to leave a cushy NFL job in the middle of the season.
Well, I mean, maybe it was just his inclination that, this is the right thing to do. We got to put this news out there, and
it's almost
good for him.
Right.
For
it's
him
like,
for biting the bullet.
Right, that's like his watchdog journalism. That might make him very off-putting for future jobs, but it's almost like it's his watchdog journalism. It's his Watergate. He's like Deep Throat kind of in that he's going to get this info out.
Off-putting for jobs,
yeah,
for teams, or maybe admirable to some
maybe
reporting
maybe
guys. But that's
out
out of the
maybe he's going to dish. He could be looked at as somebody who might dish dirt on somebody else in the future when he quits that job. So it's kind of like, is that a character trait or what? But it is sort of his watchdog journalism that's maybe getting this message that had to be out. And if his job had to go with it, then so be it.
Yeah.
In order for other people to realize that it ain't the players, man, it might be the coaches. And I'm just coming to this conclusion right now. This is not planned at all. I'm on the fly, right off the top of the head. That right there kind of convinces me that even though I've been one of Pettine's supporters for the last year, maybe he's not the guy either. Maybe they might need a new coaching change. And if that's the case, you better play Johnny Manziel.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have to play Johnny Manziel because, if we bring in a new guy, then they're going to want to know whether Johnny can play either. Because, maybe they already don't like Johnny Manziel and therefore they're going to want to draft a guy. But if Johnny Manziel can play and you can save that pick for a wide receiver or someone, more interesting, then that coach is going to find out. But no, going back to the coaches, I think it's absolutely on the coaches as to why they're playing so poorly right now. I think, it's disappointing when you look on the roster and you look on paper and you think, wow, this team might be able to put something together in certain areas and it's not pulling through. And, some players who are really some good athletes and guys like Dante Whitner and Joe Hayden and even Joe Thomas, one of the greatest offensive linemen of all time. They're not playing as well as they should be. I'm sorry, but I have to put that on the coaches because they're not getting the most out of their players. And I think of, when we were playing football as young kids, if you fumble the ball, what happens? You get disciplined. If you get a flag, what happens? You get disciplined. The coaches do something about it to prevent it from happening the next time. The same mistakes keep happening. The same poor play keeps happening. The same missed tackles keep getting missed. And I don't understand why these problems don't get fixed. And when the problems don't get fixed, I can't really immediately look at the player, especially when it's happening across the board. It's not like we have one problem child and we have one running back who keeps putting the ball on the ground. It's that across the board, all 11 players in the defense are missing tackles. All 11 players in the offense are getting flags, and every skill player is putting the ball on the ground. And it seems like there's maybe a lack of discipline and a lack of trust between player and coach that it means we unfortunately have to move on with these guys and hope that we can build continuity really quickly with whoever's next.
Yeah. I mean, I think you put it pretty solidly there. I mean, I have no arguments there at all with what you're saying. I think that that if you don't see a market improvement in at least the way they handle themselves, because the defense was playing with a noticeable uptick in energy early against St. Louis. They got in some bad situations. They might have got hooked a couple times. It didn't get called, but you can't blame losses on stuff like that. You can blame losses on the offense not executing, or when they do execute, it gets called back because of a penalty. Yeah. And that stuff has happened way too often for the Browns so far this season, and I don't see it changing anytime soon. If that does happen to change, they show a little bit of a turnaround. I'm not saying they have to reel off 9 wins in a row, but, maybe 4 or 5 wins. They finish with 6 or 7 wins, which is going to be a lot at this point still. Then maybe you keep them around and think, well, maybe the next year will be the year that they get to 500. But it's not looking pretty right now. And we might be nearing the end of the Mike Pettine era, which sucks because, like you said with that Holmgren quote, continuity is key. I mean, that is, guys usually need 3 years to see a turnaround. I would like to see this staff stick around for another year. But there have been a lot of facepalm moments with this regime. And here's the thing is, you got to remember where we came from. We came from Lombardi, Banner, and Chud. And we came from before that Holmgren, Hackert, and Shermer. Those are bad scenarios. This one might be a little bit better, but they're still really far off.
I'm not sold that Chud was such a bad option. And I'm just gonna, he had 1 year, and I don't think it's ever fair to fire a guy after 1 year. But I think we didn't get to see enough of what they had to offer, but what they offered in just 1 year wasn't great. So I'll be fair and say that much. But I don't think they had a fair enough shot. That's my.
I think there are also some personnel decisions with this staff that kind of make you scratch your head, like the Bo thing. I keep coming back to the Bo thing, and then the Cooper being used as a package guy, and then you see Isaiah Crowell start the game with like 4 or 5 runs of a lot of power. He gets a few first downs, and you never see him for the rest of the game. I think there's just some scenarios and some decisions they make personnel wise that really make me think, what do they really know what they're doing out there? I mean, do they watch the same film that everybody else watches?
Right. I mean, it's the stuff going on the field is bad enough, and it really, shakes your head till, you really hear a tick. But the things going on with management, oh man, it's so much worse. I mean, our GM was, had to sit out for 4 games, which is weird because, you never notice them during the game. So, to find out that they aren't watching the game is just completely strange. You're extending a contract to your third string quarterback who didn't even suit up on Sunday, and you're signing Dwayne Bowe to an expensive contract, and he's not even on the field. It's all guaranteed. It's not all guaranteed, but $9 million is guaranteed, and that's enough to make you think, what are you doing to our cap space here? So and Josh McCown even got a big contract that. He didn't even hit free agency, and they are already.
Yeah, they were just like, you know what? We're just gonna sign you to this whopping deal because we love you that much.
I mean, you didn't want to shop around for other quarterbacks.
I also think this regime might have it out for Manziel based on how much of an idiot he was in his first year, which is understandable, but I don't know if it's entirely justifiable.
Well, I think part of Ray Farmer wants to say, like, all right, I've done so many bad things. I drafted Justin Gilbert. Terrence West is already gone. That was a bad draft pick. I drafted a million guys in this year's draft, and half of them, so many of them aren't even on the roster. I mean,
Vince Mail gone, didn't even make the team that training camp.
It's just, all the decisions that he's made, and, to see his players, the guys that he, stuck his neck out there for, Johnny and Justin, more importantly. But I think at some point he's thinking, I got to save face. I got to prove him wrong. I got to think, all right, I got to see if Johnny can save my butt and make me look good for once. Maybe Johnny's my last hope to make me look like I'm a genius.
Are you saving face by keeping McCown in? I mean, I guess it all circles back to the same.
Well, that's not right. That's not right, right?
I know. But I don't mean to make it all circle back to this scenario. It's just an example of it. But okay, this has become Sports with Shook not so quick hit. So we're gonna close here. I want your prediction for Sunday.
Yeah. I'm sorry. What? You mean are the Browns going to win? Of course not. I think
I want a score prediction.
Look, I've always been an optimist, and I want to pick the Browns to win, and I want it to be a close one. I don't think this game's going in overtime. I don't think this is going to be a nail biter till the fourth quarter. I want it to happen so bad, trust me. But the truth of the matter is, I don't think we're going to get beat as badly as the Rams. I think it's hard. I think you lose to the Rams so poorly because you turn the ball over so often. I don't expect the team to turn the ball over so often going forward, just because that was a lot of turnovers. So I'm going to guess that Arizona wins this one 34-20. 2 touchdowns. Not a blowout, but it's not close.
It's a lot of points.
For Arizona or for the Browns?
Just in general.
It is, but I see Arizona scoring in more ways than just offensively.
Okay. All right. That's fair. That's fair. I don't know. I prefer to not predict a score just because I don't want to be way off.
You made me do it.
Well, yeah, you're the guest, of course. Let's go 27-13, Arizona.
Okay.
What did you say? What was it? 34-20? They're losing by 2 touchdowns either way.
2 touchdowns. Maybe I'm giving the Browns too much credit.
I don't have them scoring that many points. I didn't see anything encouraging from the offense last week.
Last week, but previously they didn't really struggle to score points. They just had more trouble stopping. So I'm thinking that, you turn the ball over fewer times, you'll get some points on the board. 20 points would actually be the the third lowest score of the season for them. They've scored over 20 points every game except for against the Jets and the Rams.
Let's see. You said over 20 points, right?
20 or more. Sorry.
Oh, well, that's why I got them with 27.
There you go.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. The only team that okay, I see what you're saying with the Browns. Arizona, meanwhile, has scored over 20 points in every game except for when they lost to the Steelers. So I got Carson Palmer putting up some more points this week. Start Carson Palmer. There's your fantasy tidbit of the week. Brought to you by Nick Shook on Fantasy Football, the column on Ohio.com, and the Akron Beacon Journal, which that is not actually a title of it. I mean, that's the name of it, I suppose, but it doesn't actually have a title. I just made that up on the fly, just like the former unsponsored hotline on Sports with Shook, the radio version. With that, I'm going to say thank you, Gabe, for joining me.
Thank you.
We're going to do this more often. And good luck this week watching Browns.
Hey, I mean, you're going to be a lot closer to the action than I am. I mean, at least I'll be warm and have a refrigerator close by.
Oh, well, yeah, but you know what? I haven't done this in 2 years, so I'm excited. Last year I spent last year in Southern California. I didn't get anywhere near the stadium, and the year before I was still in college. So, yeah, but yeah, for that, for Gabe Kramer, I am Nick Shook. This has been Sports Shook Quick Hits. Make sure to follow Sports Shook on Twitter and on Facebook, where we will always be posting these links. And we're also going to put this one on YouTube, which is fancy because we're moving up in the world. So until next time, we're out.